Welcome to this episode of the Willingdon on Mission podcast. My name is John. I'm one of the pastors at Willingdon, and today we have the opportunity to hear from Johann Matis. Johann, welcome here.
Thank you.
So Johann is one of our missionaries that we support at Willingdon, along with his wife Hetty, and we are in the month of June having a focus on Johann's ministry as the missionary of the month, and so this is the first of 4 episodes that you'll hear from Johann. We'll release one every week. And so let's get started. Johann, recently you were in Ukraine, and I would love to just open the floor to you, open the microphone to you, and hear some of your experience. What were you doing there? What were some of your observations? How can we pray?
Since the full-scale war broke out in February of 22, I have been around every 6 months in Ukraine, but mostly in the western parts, where it's a bit safer, and also to Kiev, but I have not been to the southeast, where we originally were having most of our ministries and church plants, and of which most of are today occupied by Russian troops. So Alexei Makayov, our coordinator of ministries in Ukraine, said it's not enough. Johann, you have to come all the way to Zaporizhia. And I thought, yeah, and there were a few things that cleared out in my calendar, and I thought this is the time. And so I had 4 passengers in the van when we started going to Ukraine. One of them was Dasha, our Ukrainian foster daughter. She came in the first weeks of the war to our home. She came from an orphanage in the city of Bucha, which was fully destroyed by the troops that were quickly advancing in the beginning. And so she stayed with us for a couple of years now. And it was on her bucket list to one day join me on a trip to Ukraine. And then the other one was Nastya with her daughter Stefania. And she was traveling to Ukraine with me to join her husband, Sergei, who we would be ordaining to be pastor of the church they have worked for years for planting in Kiev. And now the day came when the new space was being dedicated, but also Sergei was being ordained as the pastor. So their little daughter, Stefania, has never been to Ukraine. So it was very private, very dear to me to have this kid they had prayed for, and I joined them in their prayers. Was born in Germany as a refugee kid, now traveling with Ma to see father in Kiev. And then the other person still in our car was a Dutch lady. Her name is Remy, and she came from a Dutch Mennonite church that partners with the church plant in Kiev. That again is a whole story. How did it come that a historical church, centuries old, is joining a church that is rejoicing about their first space? So that was the team I was traveling with.
Okay. So how long were you in Ukraine?
And so the total was to be 8 days, including in 8 days, or 9 actually, I hoped to be back home again.
Yeah.
And so since there are no planes, the whole airspace of Ukraine is closed. It takes a lot of traveling through Germany, Poland, and then we drove into Ukraine. The border was easy. We were welcomed. And then in Lviv, which is a western large city of Ukraine, we left our car in a local partner church, and just reloaded everything into a local car, because when you enter Ukraine in your Western car, it no longer carries insurance. So we didn't cross all of Ukraine in my car, our van. We reloaded, and then we drove together to Vinnytsia, which is kind of halfway into Ukraine. And there, after a night, Sergei Filipov, our pastor from Kiev, came to pick up his wife and his daughter and the other 2 women, and Alexei Makayov and I went on to Zaporizhia.
Tell us a little bit about your experience, observations in Zaporozhye.
Yeah,
And
uh,
maybe I'll just preface that with, for those of you who don't know, um, sort of Ukrainian MB connections, there are a whole bunch of Mennonite Brethren churches in the southeast region, which is right where the Ukraine-Russia conflict has been happening. And so it's been quite chaotic and stressful, I would say, for many of these churches. But so you got to go. Tell us some of your observations.
yes, Zaporizhia was on our map because of ministries that even took place before I joined 16 years ago. But with me joined, this work was joined by John and Evelyn Weens. For many years, they were a pastoral couple at Willingdon Church. And we prayed for, hoped for, and it actually happened that they became pastors to pastors and were building something that today is called the Association of Mennonite Brethren Churches of Ukraine, while they were planting a church in Zaporizhia. So as we were approaching Zaporizhia, that is the Ukrainian pronunciation for it, that is the, as John, as you said, that is a historical area in which there were Mennonite colonies and where the Mennonite Brethren Church was birthed, middle of the 19th century, where MB mission was started when missionaries were sent to places far away, beginning in India. So that is the cradle of the MB movement that I was heading for, but now embattled and yeah, the observations, like as closer you get to the war, the more checkpoints there are, military. You see, yeah, tanks loaded on trucks that obviously need repairs after being damaged in battle. We have seen an an airplane in the air, which was an eerie sound because the airspace is completely empty. So then we approached Zaporizhia, where we met with Max and Max Oliverovsky and his family and his team. And I also brought funds with me, including funds from donors at Willingdon Church to help the widows that we have. We lost two men who used to work as volunteers on our Zaporizhia teams, working with orphans, but also in church planting in Nikolai Pole. We lost two dear brothers, and their wives are still working on our Multiply Ukraine team. So those were reasons to be with everyone, with the church and with the team, and also bring forward the funds, which we, by the way, carry in cash because of all kinds of difficulties, how one can handle it. So there was one more reason to go there. But even to go pray, hug, and spend time, there's nothing more valuable in these times than to actually be together.
Yeah.
Because the togetherness is challenged by the war in so many different ways. And I'm sure I will be able to say a few things.
Yeah.
So when
So,
approaching, yeah,
sorry,
please.
what I'm gonna do, Johann, is there's much more to talk about about this Ukraine trip. We will, but I'm gonna save that for next week for for the next podcast episode. I just wanted to give people a glimpse right now of, okay, you were there. Here was a little bit of your experience. What I'd like to talk about next time is some of the specific ministries that are happening in Zaporozhye and some ways that we can pray for Ukraine in these days. So if that's all right with you, I'm going to cut it off right now and say thank you to those of you who have been watching and listening. And please continue to pray for Johann and for his family and for his ministry. And see you next week for episode 2 of this short series.